Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be talking about the dumpster fire that is continually the discourse around just book reviews. Talking about books, because let me tell you, it ain't that serious, but a lot of people want to make it more serious than it is, and a lot more personal than it is. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through lmfao, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story for that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in the creativity that is your guys' brains. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit the first chapter and the cover page, they will be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work, because that is the difficult part once you got the book out in the world. And the third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they are available at any of your favorite places to get books, including the library if you ask your librarian. But first things first. I see that some of you have taken advantage of the new P.O. box, which I find all over the place now if you want to also take advantage of it. And because of that, I also want to share whatever you guys send me that you are actually creating or doing, and show my eternal gratitude for just how generous you are. Now, not only have some of you used the P.O. box, but also I had the pleasure of meeting our very own Whole Daddy in the last week or two, and he brought me gifts and bounties. So from there, first I want to share with you the wonderful, beautiful things that you guys have sent me. So first we've got Mike Van Hoos, our very own Whole Daddy, brought his books. I got 3 of them. The Second Son, The Son's Legacy, and Son's Legacy, and then The Son's Return, part of a trilogy, very clearly. The first chapter was read on the channel if you want to go check out the Fresh Meat feature for that, and I will be reading these once I get the chance to catch up. Thank you so much for bringing them, Mike, and it was a pleasure meeting you. You should all be jealous of what I got here. A comic by our very own Camel on the server. I'm excited. I freaking love getting comic and arts and, books. I love seeing what you guys are doing, what you guys are creating, and I love looking at Camel's art when she posts it. So now I feel special because I got this book. It is going to be on my reading list sooner because it is shorter. So be prepared for me to read this, probably now that it is open. Thank you, Camel. We have Avalon Timefall by Stephen Jensen, book 1 of the Avalon series. Thank you, Stephen, for sending this. This is also going to be added to my reading list. I mean, clearly. It's like, when am I going to read? I will. Okay, I've got like 6 books on my desktop right now for what I am currently reading. I've got Den of Sparrows by M.M. Miller, which is the second book after Tower of Dogs. Her third book in that series, Grave of Brothers, comes out in October. And then I have just read Body and Blood by Michael Gallagher, so that'll be in the next one. I know St. Gregory is on the list. And sorry if I don't have the authors' names right off the top of my head. And I know Bringer of Light is also on that list. Oh no, more books. These are from Igachan, our very own Gimp Man. We got Strange Tales from Liao Zahai. I know that I probably butchered that. Look, I had a conversation with Mike and Ruth about how I butcher names. I'm sorry, their names I ruin every time. The Crab Cookbook. What are you trying to tell me? Egao, we cannot cook you. But I hope you signed this. No crab claw on the front. Yeah, I'm so sad. So thank you so much, you guys, for the mail, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness. All of the books given to me or sent to me by the authors will be linked down in the description below in case you are interested in checking them out for yourself. So if you see anything that tickles your fancy, please check them out. And with that said, let's get into the topic of the day. So I've had a couple of videos this I feel like this year about reviews. Whether or not you're allowed to leave good reviews, people being scared of bad reviews, people getting offended over being blocked. There's just nothing that can exist. So even including last week with the story of those authors, there was discourse around, hey, I'm so scared to actually say my review or post my thoughts because I'm afraid that the author is going to come after me, which is actually very very few anything. But there are also readers that go after reviewers who don't like a book that they like. That is probably more common than the author responding to a bad review, but that's still not that common. However, there is always discourse around, hey, I'm scared to post this because I don't want people to jump on me, and hey, I don't like to post anything if it's negative or critical because I'm scared that people are going to jump on me. And let me just straight up say, you're in general opening yourself up to a response if you post something publicly, period. That's just what's going to happen, and you can't really stop it. In the same way that a book is now for public consumption is going to get the responses that it gets, your book review is going to get the responses that it gets. And that's just something that if you're going to make a public statement, you're gonna have to make peace with. And it's not specifically authors behaving badly that create an environment where you're going to be responded. The whole nature of a book review, a public book review on a blog or on a social media website that allows responses is for other people to see it and possibly interact with it. It's going to happen. It's not such a rare thing to feel kind of unsure about whether or not to posting. I've posted reviews on this channel, especially with the ALA books, because of the sensitive nature of the topics in some of those books, and have wondered if I even should, because I knew that if it clicks into the right group of people, some people are going to be really unhappy with me and start making claims of all sorts of isms because I dared to critique a book that contained social issues. Even if I'm talking about the book, the way that the book is done, it's going to constantly come back to, you're a problem because you said anything at all, because I've seen that discourse. You're not allowed to opine on stuff, and that is how Slay by Brittany Morris has a 4.66 despite being a terrible book. We're going to be talking about that one in a couple of weeks because, bro, I have never seen a mainstream book literally so disgustingly hateful. And yet it was picked up, also so carelessly put together, which also brings me to my next thing about book reviews. There is very commonly a thread among, especially indie authors. You see these threads on like Reddit or Twitter, and you see the indie authors specifically coming out to be like, I don't give anybody bad reviews or bad low-star ratings because I know what it's like to put a book together. Almost without fail, it's going to be other authors saying that. And hey, maybe there is some level of professional manners in doing that, but also you're not owed it. And I hate to break it to some people that think that you deserve participation 4 and 5 stars, but you don't. It's not the reader's job or other authors' jobs to sell your books by giving it high ratings or by lying about your book. It's also not the job of other authors to pat people on the back. There are different amounts of effort that go into books. There is still also personal taste around. Despite being a writer, I am also still a reader. And there are things that cause me literal pain when I'm reading them, and not because it's emotionally agonizing. It's because it is so terribly written. And to be frank, some authors need to be told that their book sucks. Going back to Slay, 11 days. That book, the author brags about writing in 11 days. I have no respect for you. I have very little respect for people that basically do a first draft and then throw it out there. I have very little respect for authors who don't even want to read their book a second or third time in order to make sure that it makes sense. I've got very little respect for authors who make their books over 150,000 words, over 500 pages, and it's full of fluff because they couldn't bother to go through it and cut down stuff that didn't matter because they didn't want to read it another time. Look, we all have our different processes, and that's fine. Have your different process, but I don't have to respect you because you don't respect me or my time with your book. I don't respect authors who use Kindle Unlimited's read page through flip thing. You know, you get paid per page that is flipped through. And so then you put as many pages as you possibly can in the middle of that book to get to separate the beginning from the end, so you get paid more by people trying to go through to flip to the end to see what actually happens, because the middle fluff doesn't matter. I don't respect anybody who uses AI to complete or write their books. I don't respect the people that value money over the art, that value making as much money as quickly as possible, as putting out as many garbage books in an attempt to make quick money fashion. I don't respect content creators because I'm not going to call them authors. At some point you just become a producer, but I don't respect content creators or producers who abide by the 20 to 50K model,
Because you know how many times I've been insulted by those people because, oh, I've got bills to pay. I also have bills to pay. But you know what? I care about writing my story more than I care about conning other people into buying my books so that I can make money. Anyway, I have a lot of opinions, obviously. And I've had to read a lot of terrible books, whether it's for the ALA, which needs to be proven as having all of these crappy books in traditional publishing, or if it was for university when I was in my master's program, which again, I had to read all of these self-aggrandizing literary pieces of fiction, self-victimizing literary pieces of fiction. I'm not going to give you free stars because you completed a book. It is easy enough to just spit out whatever and not care about the quality. Word count doesn't matter to me. Speed in which you put your books out doesn't matter to me. Whether or not I can fall into that book actually is what matters to me. So before I get into like some of the examples that I wanted to bring up today and some of the what spawned this specifically, I have a code. So in the case that you ever send me your books to read, and obviously from like the beginning of this video, you thought I got some books that I will be reading. But just so you know, the way that I do book reviews on this channel pretty much gives you the way of how I read a book and like what I look for when I'm reading a book. But in case you're wondering about my star ratings or how I do stuff with my Goodreads page, how I differentiate things, when I'm putting a star rating down, okay, I do 1 star is this book doesn't function. I never got into this book because the characters don't make sense, the logic doesn't make sense, the world is broken. Like, you tell me this one thing and something else entirely happens. Like, let's look at Shadow of the Conqueror, where Dalen is like, I'm trying to redeem myself. And then constantly, he's never sorry. He faces his victims up front and never gets down and humbles himself. But we're supposed to believe that he's some better guy as he's literally killing people the same way he killed people before and is saying that he's a better person. Now, you can do that as a story where somebody is delusional and thinks that they are better, but they're the same as before. But we don't have that reinforcement from the people around him, because the people around him say that he has better light than everybody else. So there is a way to do things like that. There's a variety of ways to do things, and that's why I also typically try to finish most of the books that I read in case it puts things into perspective that make something work. And most of the time they don't. So a 1 star for me is your book does not function. The characters do not function. The characters are not just flat, because I don't like just saying power fantasy gets everything that it wants, to the point that it breaks the world. That is the 1 star. The 2 star is slightly less unfunctioning than the 1 star, and that is pretty much it. I still did not get into the world. There were problems in this story. This doesn't have as much work to do on it as the 1 star does in order to actually be a functioning universe. A 3 star for me is this book is fine. It's likely not my genre. I probably didn't really click with it for one reason or another. Either the focus wasn't there for me, the characters just weren't there for me, it's just outside of my genre. Like, typically epic fantasy, high fantasy, I'm not going to click with because I prefer character-focused novels, and epic and high fantasy focus too much on the world building and the big world stuff and the big action stuff, more so than the character stuff. And so it's like, that's fine, but if there's not a huge character story, or if it's heavily more an adventure story and there's very little character involvement at all, like your character is perfect, or fairly perfect, I'm not really gonna jive with it, because I don't read for the action story. But a 3 star is like, it's fine. And that also means that there were like no major logical issues that pulled me out of it. I just didn't really jive for one reason or another. 4 stars for me is that I enjoyed the story, and then like, that's it. It could be any level, almost any level of enjoyment, but I enjoyed the story. And then a 5 star is I enjoyed this book so much that it transcended the flaws. It transcends all flaws. I just had a really good time with this book. And yes, that has happened. Empress Teresa is an unironic 5 star for me because it is so fun. And guess what? Empress Teresa has over all of the 1 stars. So I use this as a barometer, and you should be ashamed if you write a story and it makes less sense than Empress Teresa, with how notorious Empress Teresa is. Okay, so Empress Teresa is fantastic because, one, it is so over the top, it is hilarious. Like, between Jew Island, between the freaking time when she walks into the room full of Middle Eastern leaders, and she's like got these pictures of the desert of the Middle East and of Europe, and she's like, hey, you see this crappy desert? That's where you live. You see these beautiful European meadows? I basically have goddess powers. I could make your nasty Middle Eastern area look as beautiful as Europe. Do you want that? Then you're going to behave. And she just like, she lays it down in this boardroom of Middle Eastern leaders. And then the other thing where she is, oh my gosh, when she grounds the lawyers for trying to sue her. By grounding, I mean she like, that's it. She creates something in the universe that anytime the lawyer steps into a vehicle, the battery just drains. So he can't go anywhere until he drops the lawsuit. And then there was the other thing, which is like, hey, Middle Easterners, I need you to stop attacking Israel and stop going to war. And if you don't, then I'm going to go and drill up my own oil and basically wreck your economy, okay? So you need to behave yourselves. And then they don't. So she goes and gets it and creates her own little islands out in the middle of the ocean to start drilling for oil. And then she's like, okay, OPEC, my gasoline is 2 cents less than yours. Screw you. She making baller moves is all I'm saying. Anyway, the thing that Empress Teresa has over the 1-star books that I read is, one, when Empress Teresa makes a decision and does something, like she jumps out of a plane and Hal inside of her tries to save her life reflectively, and so it stops the world from spinning. She then has to figure out how to start the world spinning again, or at least how to make the plants get watered, because since the world isn't spinning, it's not really raining on crops and people are going to die because crops are going to die. And so she makes decisions that she's not very smart because she's an 18-year-old girl, which fair. But then every decision she makes to try to solve the problem kind of just makes it worse. So her actions actually have consequences for the most part. There are some that it's just like keeps going and we don't get to see it play out, how much she wrecks the economy, you know, by flooding it with gold and silver and diamonds. Or, you know, 300 children, because it ends there. But every time she tries to solve something in the book, she does actually make things generally worse. And so her actions have consequences. The other thing is that the book remains within its logic. It is over the top. It is overpowerful, but it does not break its own system of over-the-top magic. And so I can just be in it. And it transcends because it is just an enjoyable, over-the-top story. And that's apparently what I like, because I also loved Model Land for a similar reason. It's over the top, it's ridiculous, it's interesting. Because of that, it transcended the slow parts where I think it could have been cut. It transcends the extraneous training montages. It transcends the grammatical errors and the typos and the layout errors. None of that matters because the book was enjoyable. So generally, I don't judge a book by the grammar. I don't give it a 1-star because of the grammar, because that doesn't matter. Anybody can get their grammar fixed. It's whether or not you can tell a good story that makes sense with the characters that make sense. That's what I focus on. So now that you know that, now when I'm looking at star ratings, because there's also definitely star inflation, but in the way when I'm looking at books on whether to read things or not, one, I don't really determine based on their reviews, but I do kind of look and see what the culture around the book is based on reviews and the ratings. If it is a 4 or a 5-star average, then that book was only sold to friends, families, or the niche, and that's pretty much all that's reading it, because the niche is always going to give it a higher rating, or the friends and family are generally going to give it a higher rating for obvious reasons. That is why you will end up with monster smut books that have higher ratings than classical books, because they are only sold to the niche, and if they got outside of the niche, usually they would hit lower. If we want to mention more than the monster smut, then we can also mention, you know, the red pill, black pill, the waifu fiction is generally sold in the same area. If a book is between 2 and 4 stars, usually that means that it has a widespread audience. It reached people inside and outside its target audience. It has been reviewed by people all over the place. So you'll get a speckling of responses in there. And then if it is 2 stars or below, usually it's controversial, like the book has what is considered problematic elements, or the author has done something and is being review bombed. Maybe the author hasn't done anything, but somebody wants to pick on it. Those are your choices. But generally, 2-star and below has nothing to do with the quality of the book. Even Model Land, I think, is under 2 stars. And that's just, I think it's just because it's over the top, because Model Land was not terribly written. I think people just did not expect whatever it was. But it makes absolute sense. Anyway, so those are the rating systems that I look at when I am actually creating. So now let's look at some of this other stuff that actually spawned this discussion. And let me tell you, book reviews and responses are not that serious. And this is also one of the places where I lose respect for people because they treat book responses, personal responses, as strictly marketing, as strictly selling a book. And I understand that book reviews, book ratings, whatever, do sell books and affect the algorithm. However, authors have no demand over the star ratings, the responses that readers have, and readers have no responsibility to the authors to inflate the rating, one, for ego, or two, to sell your book so that it performs better in the algorithm. The algorithm is broken, okay? If everything is floating to the top because of lies, then it is all broken, and there needs to be a change in the idea around freaking book reviews and ratings if this is where we are at, where it's like, well, if you give me a 3-star, then you're dooming me to fail. No, and it's not that personal. I remember reading, I think it was, his name was Augustin, and then there was also Why Not Wichita, because the way that somebody approached me after I gave Why Not Wichita a 2-star review, where they were like, if you give it a 2-star, then you want my business to fail. No, I'm just responding to a book with how I feel about the book, because I want to go back and look at my book log of what I've read and know how I felt about those books. I'm not going to arbitrarily give a book a 4 or 5-star review just for your sales. So it's not me trying to ruin your business. And that's one of the areas in which I lose respect for somebody that puts out books, a producer. I'm not going to call you an author, but a producer who puts out books and your main concern is whether or not your book has the correct rating in order to sell more. And this is going to give me possibly hate. I accept my fate. Anyway, so I saw this Twitter post by CD Fox that said, have you ever given a 1 or 2-star rating? Don't name names, but I'm keen to hear your reasons for doing so. Yesterday, I got a 5-star rating on the lovely review. I was delighted. Today, I got a 2-star rating and not so delighted. So obviously, I've given a lot of lower reviews, though when I do book reviews, I don't tend to do star ratings anymore because I don't think that they're very helpful. I just talk about my opinions. That's also when I'm looking into a book, I only look at the reviews for information because I'm looking at them as a discussion. And some of the things that I also look for in book reviews when I'm reading the book reviews is specifics. I want to find specific references to things in the book, because if there are 5-star reviews and it's just like, this is amazing, this is wonderful, and maybe it mentions the character names, you're not telling me any specifics about the book, like what you enjoyed about the book. You're not telling me scenes or giving characterization or anything, so that's not very helpful to me. You don't have to, but I'm saying where I find value in book reviews is in the details. Same thing if I read a 1-star review or a 2-star review and it says this sucks, or the reviews that are full of this person is an ism or this person did this. I don't care. That's not about the book. That's not about the review. I want the details. So that's one of the ways that I also sort through the book reviews. Also, if it's very obvious that the person is posting things based on personal political belief, that also doesn't help me. Like recently, I was looking at Daniel Green's new book, and there were some posts in there talking about him writing police that were not bad people, and how, oh, you're a good police person, but you're just in a bad system, and how that personally offended them, and how, no, you need to write about this other thing entirely. That's not helpful to me because you're writing a review for a book that is completely different than the book that is here, and that is all based on your personal taste, which is fine, but that tells me nothing about this book. It just tells you about a book that you wish you were reading because of your political views. So, like, there are various things that I look at when I'm reading a review as to whether it's going to help me determine anything about a book. And for me, reading book reviews is supplemental for book discussion, because after I finish a book, I generally want to talk about what I experienced, and that's why I do book reviews, is to talk about what I experienced and then to see what other people think if they have read those same books, even if we have different opinions, because it's interesting to get a different perspective. Anyway, so we got this. And this is a perspective that always bothers me, is trolls and shills are everywhere. If someone gave you a 5-star rating, no way in hell you deserve a 2-star rating. You cannot please everybody. A book with 5-star responses will undoubtedly also get 2, 3, 4, and 1 stars. It's just how it is. Because you cannot please everyone, and everyone has different tastes. But this idea that if somebody doesn't like something, then obviously they're a troll is a major cope. Now, it's when you get into these things that you also start seeing the constant. If I don't like a book, to give it If I don't like a book to give it that bad of a rating, usually I DNF it. That said, I understand some people will not like my work and that they are free to rate it however they wish. I do notice that the low ratings almost never have reviews. What does that have to do with anything? Because nobody owes you a review. It's not less legitimate because it doesn't have a review on it. I stopped posting reviews on Goodreads because I didn't want attention on Goodreads for my opinions. If you want my opinions, you have to go onto my YouTube page. Because a lot of stuff goes down on Goodreads. It's very much a social media website, and people do get on you for that. Ratings and reviews are so weird. One person finds your work inspiring while the same words leave a bad taste in another person's mouth. I usually avoid giving ratings if I enjoyed a book so little that I rate it a 1 or a 2. This is what causes rating inflation, where everybody thinks that it's bad if it's not a 4.5 or higher. Because people aren't honest about the books that are not good. I don't give 1 or 2 star reviews. As a writer, I can't bring myself to leave a 1 or 2 star rating. To be honest, if I wasn't enjoying a book that much, I'd probably not finish it, and I'd never leave a rating review on unfinished books. I've never given such a low rating. If I think a book is awful or not for me, I just move on. But my first book received a low rating from a reader who said wasn't my type of story because of the infidelity in it. As an author, if a low 1 is rare, focus on the great ratings. Many times, for terrible editing, if nothing makes sense, if the author can't even spell check the character names to keep it consistent, usually something so bad I DNF, or something with potential that really needed an edit. You know, I used to leave 1 and 2 star ratings. Now that I'm published, though, I've stopped. I only leave 4 stars or more if I feel like they've earned them. But even if I don't leave a rating or review, that doesn't mean that it didn't merit a 4 or 5 star. Unless it's a problematic book, I don't leave low ratings. I've received 2 star ratings, and sometimes to that reviewer, that's not a bad rating, or their scale of 5 is a phenomenal book, and a great book is 4, so to them 3 is good, 2 is okay, they enjoyed it. And that's true. I've seen a variety of different ways in which even my books have received different star ratings. It's because a lot of this stuff, especially around what ratings mean, the rating system, and trying to con stuff into selling more books, that the conversation around books and around reviews has become so toxic in recent times. We should just be able to talk about books, and you got an opinion, and that's the end of that. But you've got the aggressive side from the reviews, and you've got the aggressive side from the authors. Now, I don't want to pretend that there aren't reviewers out there who have built their entire platform off of insulting authors, because that exists as well. However, authors are also told pay attention to the reviews so you can get better, but also the reviews aren't for you. There are a lot of mixed signals going around, and then there are also the authors who threaten people and ruin friendships over reviews, and this expectation. Look, your friends and your family may or may not pick up your books, may or may not like the style of stories that you write. However, they are not necessarily your target audience. I understand wanting to talk to your friends and your family and your loved ones about your stories, but also if you're going to ask somebody to read your book for you, be prepared for whatever answer they give you, regardless of whether you're friends or not. But especially, don't do this. This was going around the chatting, and I thought it was a perfect seg into the whole rest of whatever this video is going to be about, which is, am I the jerk for not giving a 30-year-plus friend's debut novel a 5-star review? Quote, a beloved friend of 30-plus years published a book. It's on a real press and has received glowing jacket blurbs from a number of big-named authors. I write a lot of book reviews and have hundreds of followers. I write detailed, honest reviews. I gave the novel a 4-star ranking, a detailed and praise-laden review with no negative commentary, nor any caveats on why I withheld the 5th star. The book is good, ambitious in scope, and a serious accomplishment, but I reserve the 5-star rankings for superb, nearly flawless, that I would read it again tomorrow literature. I anticipated that even that level of couched or implied critique would likely draw fire, so I opted to not qualify the 4-star in any way. It was a 100% positive review that I thought would entice readers because of its detail and specificity. The friend contacted me asking, did you mean to give me a 4-star ranking on Amazon? If you did, could you take it down? They followed by issuing a second demand and take it down on Goodreads too. Before I could reply or take any action, the author's partner wrote into the same group chat, quote, "As you know, we're pouring our hearts, souls, and finances into marketing this book. Initial ratings are incredibly important, and anything less than 5 stars is unhelpful. Very unhelpful. We will get our share of lesser ratings, but we don't expect them from a friend who understands their impact." I spent an afternoon thinking about how to respond. Change the rank to a 5 and be a liar for a good friend? I mean, not a lot of skin off my nose, but honestly, I had not expected a demand for an expected 5-star review. Or should I honor the initial request by the author and simply take down the review? I literally read the request as being that. If I don't give it a 5-star, take it down. I read a lot of things literally. I opted to honor the request to take down the review, and I replied, and I quote, "If you feel that 100% positive, detailed 4-star review is detrimental to your sales, I will honor your request to remove the review for now. The last thing that I would want is to hurt you and your sales." This did not go over well. I was accused of stabbing them in the back and berated for daring to issue anything less than a 5-star. When an author had blurbed, "This is destined to be a classic." How could I possibly disagree? I didn't disagree, but I note that the author did not give a star rating with his blurb. I am truly bereft, thinking that this issue could torpedo an incredible, long-lasting friendship. So further down here, we have Daddy's Boy 75 saying, "Think of your numbers as a percentage grade. 5 is 100%, 4 is 80, 3 is 60, etc. Your decision to not give out 5s reminds me of an English teacher that refuses to give out A's with the reason of the students could always do better. While some may think it's their classroom, they're entitled to do what they want. The issue is that grades go beyond that class. It alters the student's GPA, which could impact scholarships and college admissions. In this scenario, you're pulling down the average GPA by using the grading scale differently than everyone else. Everybody uses the grading scale differently. This is such a garbage take. I'd side with you if you were a famous, well-known book reviewer with your own column in a major newspaper or magazine. So your ratings are only legitimate if you have a giant platform. Is that what this is saying? But you're just slightly popular with a few hundred followers on a website with millions of users. To outsiders, what you see as integrity is being seen as you having an overinflated ego. Sorry, but unintentionally the asshole. How? How is it not the author who has an overinflated ego who believes that they should only receive 5-star reviews from their friends and family? That's not the ego. It's also funny that in this scenario, I want to compare this to the situation with, was it Lauren Hugh a year or two ago, when she was like, "Oh, who is this giving me a 4-star?" and it was like a 4.5, and Twitter exploded on that person. Or then you have the 3 River chick that said, "Oh, who is this bitch giving me a 4-star review?" Those are a problem, but then other people up in here are going to say that this person is the problem for not giving that other person a 5-star review that they are somehow for some reason owed. Look, you're not. And it's not any reader's job to, 1, sell your book, 2, you're saying that, oh, it's only doing this because it affects the algorithms eventually, maybe. Daddy's Boy doesn't hear, but some of them will say, hey, it affects it showing up in the algorithms. I get books recommended to me on Goodreads that are below 4-star averages all the time. That is a lie. At least it is partially untrue from my own experiences. I am not only recommended 4 stars or above. It is also not the reader's job to maintain the average of your book. This is such a toxic way to approach this, and it's one of the reasons why the discourse around reviewing and ratings is so bad. All you're going to do is discourage anybody from giving anything, so then you're going to have a perfect 5-star review from 7 people because you know all of that. I don't understand where this entitlement to how other people respond, other people's loggings comes from, other than your desire to sell more stuff and use every person that you run into to sell more stuff. And so this is one of the problems, one of the many problems that has butted up with the interactions of reviews and marketing and sales, and people taking it into their own hands to then go and threaten people or to get on people and mess up your relationships because your ego is so fragile that you can't stand a 4-star review. Like I said, my 5 stars are also very specific. They're the ones that it just transcends everything. I love the characters. I loved the actions in the story. I loved the story, that any problems that it had, I just don't freaking care. That's my 5-star review, and a lot of books do not have that. In fact, most books don't have that. In fact, get ready for the tier list of a lifetime this year, because I had to add an extra low. So I had to mess with my tiers because my reading experiences this year have been horrendous. And no, I'm not protecting anybody's feelings from it, because you get to know what I read and how I read and why I read it the way I did, and there's going to be that. If there are tears, at least I'm not crying alone. But nobody owes anybody anything. And this whole pity of like, oh, you tried so hard, you got a book out there, we all owe it to you to sell your book. No, I'm reading a book, I'm being entertained, or I'm not. And then I'll tell you about the experience either way. But this is so ridiculous. And also, how can this exclaim that the person is wrong for their 4-star review when you have all of these other examples of authors being dragged and their careers being ruined because they dared to question a 4-star review? So is it only okay when other people comment on an author's 4-star reviews and said they are owed 5? But it's a problem if the author themselves says it. This is just going to create a situation, which is what we had over here on Twitter, where people are saying, I only give high ratings. If I'm not going to give it a high rating, I just don't rate it. So then we're just having authors trading other authors for favors, hoping that their book also doesn't get sunk. And it's a bunch of garbage. It's just patting each other on the back to sell more stuff instead of genuinely talking about books. And hey, maybe that's your thing. Maybe you're more of a business person than an actual reader or enjoyer of this kind of content. Maybe you don't care about the characters, because that's where I spend all of my time. Is I would rather talk about characters. Hey, if you give it a 2 or a 3, I still want to talk to you about characters if you want to talk about characters. That is really all that I love, all that I care about, all that I thrive on, is hearing the passion and these ideas behind the theme and the characters and the creation. It's my bread and butter. It's like what I live for. So maybe you're just a business person. I know a lot of them, they don't really care about the creative side of things. They follow trends. They push stuff out as quickly as possible. They just want to make money. And if you don't approve of everything that they do, if you don't say that their cover is great, their ratings are great, you're only going to give them high ratings, you only talk well about their book, then you're not in support of them. Because it's all about sales and it's all about ego. At least that's my opinion. Let me know what yours is down in the comments below. I know, spicy video. I remember saying something about this year being year of the spice, and I don't know if I brought it, but here we are. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out? The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him. Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry. Flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?